Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at unlimitedenergynow.com and catherinecarrigan.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter so you can find out even more helpful, practical, useful information about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our topic for today is one that you're going to really want to pay attention to because it's about how to heal your thyroid naturally. Thyroid problems affect lots of people in our society, especially people who have adrenal burnout. Our guest today is Damian Dube. Damian is a functional medicine and nutritional practitioner. You can find out more about him and his excellent work at e3energyevolve.com. Welcome, Damian Dube.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate you having me.
Now, Damian, for our audience, what is your thyroid? A lot of people have heard about a thyroid, but maybe they don't even know what it is. What's your thyroid?
You know, it's really kind of like the thermostat of the human body, or really anybody. Animals have thyroids too. So basically, it helps to regulate body temperature, but it does so much more than that. It helps regulate your metabolism, how you burn energy, and there are so many different symptoms that go along with thyroid issues, or whether it's hyperthyroid, meaning an overactive thyroid, or what's normally the case, hypothyroid, which is an underactive thyroid.
But your thyroid is an actual an endocrine gland located in your throat.
Correct, right? So ironically, it sits right in your throat, and it separates the head from the body, right? Separates the mind from the rest of the body. Okay, so it's kind of like that intermediate between the two, and that's where a lot of thyroid disease kind of stems from. Is when that voice is kind of suppressed, and that puts a lot of stress on that gland, which in turn creates some malfunctions down the road, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years down the road.
Yeah, so if I'm doing a medical intuitive reading, I'm going to be looking at your fifth chakra, and there's a lot of things that affect your fifth chakra, right there. Now, Damian, I know that you have a deep personal experience of the long-lasting effects of stress-related chronic disease like thyroid disease in your own life, and that you have healed your own thyroid and autoimmune illness and chronic fatigue syndrome naturally. Can you share a bit about your personal story and background and how that led to what you do?
Yeah, not to be misleading, but it was actually my wife, Heather, who's my business partner, colleague, the love of my life. She actually in our mid-30s, right around our wedding, was quite stressful with doing a wedding cross country. We were living in Northern California at the time. We're from New Jersey, so planning that was very stressful to her. On top of that, she had a marketing job where she was working 70, 75 hours a week, traveling a lot. Right before our wedding, she got laid off, and my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer right after the wedding. Then we were relocating, and then we had a tax audit. All this, just all kinds of stressful events occurring in a very short period of time. And shortly thereafter, she started to notice symptoms. She was already starting to get kind of fatigued. No zest for life kind of thing. We always had a background in athletics and being very physical. And she started to lose that drive as well. And it wasn't until she was going to different doctors, mostly medical doctors. Nobody could pinpoint things. They were telling her, well, it's allergies. We were in the Sacramento Valley region, which is a lot of agriculture. So it's kind of like just a pool of toxins from the environment, from chemicals and spraying and stuff like that. So the doctor was saying, I've been doing allergies here for 25 years, and I tell you, you have allergies. She said, well, how come I don't look anything like everybody else in your office? I mean, at this point, when symptoms were starting to really come through, I mean, her whole face was inflamed. Her eyes were swelling shut. Like they were like almost scale-like, like a snake skin where they would start to peel off. Her hair was falling out. Very inflamed, not only in the face, but everywhere, throughout her body. And she just knew that that wasn't really the answer. It wasn't allergies. So, we looked at other modalities as far as healing. We decided we wanted to go a more natural route, but there was really nobody that was really piecing things together. We traveled across country to see somebody who kind of pointed her in the right direction, got her started on her healing journey, but it still wasn't fully complete and it wasn't really powerful enough. So it took, about 2 years and about $40,000 plus out of pocket, right? Because health insurance doesn't cover that stuff, which is fine. And forced us into a medical bankruptcy during a time when we were both out of work and, so on and so forth. So, through this whole process, we realized that there's got to be a better way. And it's just not out there at the time. This is back in like 08, 09. So that's why we decided she was going to go back to school, become a functional nutritionist. Shortly after that, I went back to school and continued my education, become a functional nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner. Heather has also, similar to you, she does energy medicine from like a quantum physics aspect. And what we found is that, in our athletic lives pre-Hashimoto's, we mentored with some of the top coaches in the world, some Olympic coaches. And what we found was that if we were to take a lot of what we learned through competitive athletics, the nutritional approach and supplement approach to that, and combined it with the functional nutrition and functional medicine approach, you can actually create even more powerful, more quick, more complete healing results, and so that's what we do now. So
very exciting.
Yeah. Heather can speak to it much more eloquently than I can, because it's technically her story, but going through the process with her as her husband, it was like very, it was a struggle, obviously,
Yeah, and I have to add, my own personal story to this as well, because I was on thyroid medicine for actually a couple decades.
Wow. Okay.
And like many people, I was first put on Synthroid in my early 30s, and I can remember going to the doctor and saying, I don't really feel any better on Synthroid, and the doctor was like, whatever, next.
Right.
And so I tried a number of the so-called, more natural ways. I tried Natrathroid. I did compounded T3. And it was only actually after going through menopause and getting my hormones balanced that I got off thyroid medicine. And again, I would probably been on thyroid medicine at least 20 years. Right. I'm now off all thyroid medicine. I feel actually better.
It's amazing how it works.
Amazing, because usually if you put on thyroid medicine, you're told this is the way it has to be. You got to be on
the rest of your life.
The rest of your life. This is the typical message is if you're on thyroid medicine, it's forever. And then typically, if you're on thyroid medicine, they put you on Synthroid, which frequently, as you know, makes no difference. And you can make your own comments about Synthroid. I'd love to hear what you say. But again, and then lots of my clients, they've gone through the Natrathroid, the compounded T3. And, it's like nothing makes a difference because they're looking at the wrong things.
Yeah.
So let's talk about stress. And because my understanding is that the stress hormone cortisol, when you get stressed, your body secretes cortisol, and that actually suppresses your thyroid function. So can you share for our audience more about stress and how that gets overlooked by both doctors and practitioners that limits patient results?
Yeah, I mean, well, let's start by talking a little bit about the adrenal glands, right? So there are two little glands that sit just above the kidneys, and they're there to help produce some of your endorphin type hormones, okay, or your basically cortisol, some of your sex hormones and pre-hormones like DHEA, some of your estrogens, testosterones, and mineral balancing hormones, and so on, okay. Epinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline. And so basically they're designed to help you combat a stressful situation, okay? So if you think about, let's say 1,000 years ago, somebody is being chased by a tiger through the jungle, right? Your adrenal glands kick in, okay? And it creates that fight or flight response, right? You're either gonna fight or you're gonna get the hell out of there, pardon the expression. So basically during that process, your vitals start to enhance, okay? So it increases blood flow to your extremities, increases pupil dilation, increases heart rate, breathing, respiration. It converts stored glycogen or basically your stored sugars into glucose to be used as an immediate energy source to get you away from that physical threat, okay? And then once you're away from that threat, then you have a chance to kind of sit down, relax, recharge, just like your cell phone battery, right? You plug it in and the adrenal glands recharge, okay? Unfortunately, in today's world, there is no reprieve, okay? We are constantly stressed, all right? There's financial stress. There's emotional stress, the stress of your marriage, your children, the economy. I mean, if you turn the TV on, you watch politics, that regardless of which side you sit on, there's going to be stress that's incurred there, and then you go to the gym to burn some stuff off, but then that's an additional stress that you're applying to your already stressed out body, right? So there is no break. You go to sleep, your mind's racing, you're constantly thinking about what you have to do, what you didn't get done that day, your kids' events, whatever the case may be, okay? And then you can add in there nutritional stress, okay? You have, if you're eating stuff that your immune system is reacting to, the environmental stress, the toxins that are being sprayed in your community, the vaccines that you get for this quote-unquote flu epidemic, right? I mean, all these things are extremely stressful to the body, okay? So we're in that constant fight or flight mode. So we don't get the chance to kind of recharge anymore, okay? So with that being said, when you're in that constant fight or flight mode and your vitals enhance, your non-vitals, things that aren't necessarily needed for that immediate threat, start to slow down or stop, okay? So during that process, your detoxification slows down or stops, okay? Your digestion slows down or stops. And your immune system gets compromised. So all these things, I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, when you're constantly stressed, you're not digesting your food appropriately. You're not eliminating toxins appropriately. Your immune system is not reacting appropriately. It may be overreactive or underreactive, whichever the case may be, okay? So it's not surprising that so many people are developing these other issues, and then as far as the cortisol secretion, yeah, absolutely, it suppresses thyroid from releasing some of its hormones, okay? But on top of that, it actually impacts these certain enzymes that are necessary, called the deiodinase enzymes 1, 2, and 3, which are necessary for not only the release of hormones, of the thyroid hormones, but also conversion, carrying them to different cells. So all this is kind of like the perfect storm, right? And it's no wonder that the thyroid kind of takes the brunt of things.
Okay. Now, in one of my 8 books, Unlimited Energy Now, I specifically talk about how to recover from adrenal burnout and how to rebuild your energy. And there are 3 stages of adrenal burnout. Beginning in stage 2, your thyroid function starts to decline. People start noticing they're gaining weight, and it becomes harder and harder to lose weight. And what I notice, and I'm sure you do too, when people are in stage 3 of adrenal stress, they're energetically exhausted. And no matter how little they eat, I have people come in, they're crying, going, I'm not eating anything and I can't lose weight, right?
I'm working out like a crazy person.
Yeah, we hear this all day long. And it's true. They come in, they bring their food diary, they're basically starving. They're actually starving on lots and lots of levels.
Yeah.
So if you're in the audience and you're listening and you're starving and you can't lose weight, then you've got to look at your thyroid function and your adrenal function. But underlying, as Damian mentioned, it's really your thyroid. Now, there's an actual hormone called reverse T3, which lowers your thyroid function. Reverse T3 is secreted when you're under stress. So, Damian, can you explain for our audience what exactly is reverse T3? How does it work? What turns it on? What turns it off?
Yeah, I mean, really, the reverse T3 or RT3 kind of counters the effect of the T3, basically, which is the active form of the thyroid hormone. Okay, so basically, we have a lot of people that come to us and they've run their labs, they've gotten their TSH levels run, their T4, T3, so on. Doctors say, well, everything's in normal range, you're fine. Well, I'm experiencing hypothyroid symptoms. I'm not fine. Something's wrong, right? But they're neglecting to even consider this one little piece, which is the RT3, okay? So if your RT3 is elevated, it's an indication that even though your T3 is being produced, it's just not effective. It's not being utilized. It's not being carried. It's not being, it's basically just being negated by that reverse T3 hormone, okay? So as far as how to counter that, it's a much bigger conversation than we're going to have in 40 minutes, right? But one thing is managing that stress, okay? Adding in the things that are going to power your systems up, okay? That are going to kind of give your body a little bit of a break and giving it a little bit extra oomph in order to aid in detoxification, aid in energy restoration, adrenal restoration, and so on and so forth. I don't know that everything kind of it necessarily stems from a thyroid issue. I think that most thyroid problems are more secondary or tertiary to other things that are happening metabolically within the body. The thyroid just happens to take a brunt of it.
Yeah, well said, Damian. And what I tell my clients, first of all, and I'm sure you do the same thing, where if you go to a traditional medical doctor and they do the traditional tests on thyroid, they're going to miss what's going on because they're usually only testing for TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, and T4. But T3 is 3 to 5 times more biologically active than T4. And they're usually not testing for T3, and they're usually not actually measuring your reverse T3. What I tell my clients to do to stop that production of reverse T3, you have to think of reverse T3 like a brake on your metabolism. And the more stressed you are, the lower your thyroid function is going to be. If you don't remember anything that we said today except for that, then that's what you need to do. What you need to remember. So I tell my clients, you need to take up yin practices where you come to a halt, where your body gets still, where your mind gets still. What does that look like? Meditation, restorative yoga, resting, taking hot baths, lying in a hammock, being still, doing nothing.
Stop thinking.
Stop thinking. Yes.
Stop researching. Stop.
Yes, because it's your nervous system. So what happens is we get stuck in the sympathetic side of the nervous system where we're constantly stressed, and you need to turn on your parasympathetic, which is where you relax.
Right.
Now, Damian, can you explain, there's a lot of different kinds of thyroid disease. So let's talk about what is Hashimoto's disease, which is really common. What is Hashimoto's?
Yeah, so Hashimoto's is an autoimmune thyroiditis. So basically, for some reason, your immune system is viewing your thyroid gland as a threat, okay? And it starts attacking it, all right? And then you see your antibodies increase, which is an indication that you have Hashimoto's. Okay, basically it's your immune system attacking your own gland, its own body. And one thing that is kind of overlooked quite a bit is the impact of what you're eating. So we've all heard the term leaky gut. I hate that expression because I think everybody has some type of over permeability of the intestinal tract. But basically that's what I like to call it. It's just an overly permeable digestive tract. Okay. And when you look at your digestive tract, it's supposed to have these really tight junctures that allow single nutrients, like a single B vitamin, like riboflavin, thiamine, niacin, vitamin C, so on and so forth, right, to pass through, as well as single amino acids, okay? So alanine, beta-alanine, so on and so forth, okay? The problem is that when we're constantly stressed, and we talked about digestion kind of halts, it does kind of create this erosion on the intestinal wall, okay? And then if you add into that your compromised immune system, so maybe an intestinal infection kind of manifests, like a candida or some type of bacteria, parasite, or whatever, creates that dysbiosis that continues to erode that intestinal lining, okay? So now these tight junctures become less tight, okay? And then instead of single nutrients passing through and single amino acids passing through, then undigested strands of amino acids are going to pass through. And a lot of times, I'll take gluten as an example. Gluten is something that's very, very difficult to digest, and most of us have not evolved enough in order to digest that actual protein. Okay, so those undigested gluten amino acid strands very much resemble the amino acid structure of the thyroid gland. Okay, and so when your immune system starts to see this strand constantly appearing, it's saying, that's not supposed to be here. I'm going to attack it. Okay, so then it attacks the gluten molecule. But then the immune system sees the thyroid sitting there, right? It says, I recognize that. I'm going to attack it, right? So it starts attacking the thyroid. And this could be really any type of autoimmune condition, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis or anything else. It's the immune system attacking your own body, right?
Now, when I have a client who has autoimmune thyroid disease like Hashimoto's or any autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, one of the first things that I tell them to do is get off of gluten. So how crucial do you think it is for people to stop eating gluten if they have Hashimoto's disease?
I think I don't care what our government tells you and what the wheat industry tells you, you really avoid gluten. Even if it doesn't show up on like a quote unquote food sensitivities test as a reactive food, your body 99 times out of 100 is going to have a really difficult time digesting it. Most people. So better safe than sorry and remove it, and it's extremely addictive at the same time. Some of those undigested gluten molecules actually resemble opioids and creates an opiate-like response in the brain, creating that addiction, which is why you tell somebody they can't have their bagels and sandwiches every day. They're like, what do you mean I can't have my bread? And they go into this rage, right? Because they're like literally physically addicted to it. It's probably as severe as probably more severe than the opioid crisis that's facing our country right now, the United States. Yeah, so I recommend everybody avoid gluten or any food that contains gluten.
Right. If you want to have a healthy thyroid, don't eat gluten.
Yeah. And that's a great starting point, right? That's not the cure-all, obviously, right?
Not the cure-all. Because
there could be other foods that you're eating that if your immune system is reacting to, right, then it could create a different type of response. So
yeah. I know in all my new clients, I test their food sensitivities. And then if they've got a lot of food sensitivities, then I'm going to put them on a gut healing program. But what about glyphosate, also known as Roundup, made by our dear friends at Monsanto? How does that toxic chemical affect our thyroid gland?
Well, it affects everything, right? It affects your ability to detoxify. It affects your nervous system. It does affect your gut ecology. It's just toxic all around, So as far as how it directly affects the thyroid gland, I can't really answer that. I don't even think that really matters, to be honest with you, right? Glyphosate is one of the worst poisons that are facing our society right now, and it's everywhere. So yeah, it's something else. I recommend going out and picking your weeds. Getting a little fresh air exercise, and get your hands in that ground to get some microbes in your system. Rather than spraying that toxic garbage everywhere.
Right.
Leads to cancer and all kinds of other problems.
Yeah. I always tell everybody my garden is 100% organic. I'm not putting it Roundup on my garden, and it's just way healthier. Now, coming back to the diet, one of the things that I talk to my clients about who have thyroid problems is going on an anti-inflammatory diet. Because if you have inflammation anywhere in your body is going to secrete cortisol, which will suppress your thyroid. So the top pro-inflammatory foods are going to be caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, fried foods, and gluten. So what do you recommend for your clients about eating and thyroid? What do you tell them to eat? What do you tell them not to eat?
Well, similar to you, we always look at their reactive foods, right? We're looking at more, not necessarily like an IgG response, but more of like the inflammation that's created once that food or food group has been introduced to the blood. And then once we determine that, we definitely just have them avoid all that stuff too, right? But on top of that, let's say that their immune system isn't necessarily reacting to dairy, right? We still have them avoid dairy. We have them avoid soy. We have them avoid corn, because corn is very similar to gluten in its protein structure. Some people do okay with nightshades, others don't, right? So, it really is individualized. A lot of it kind of depends on your heritage, where your family is from. Eastern Europe, Northern Europe is going to have probably a different genetic makeup than somebody that's more around the Mediterranean versus somebody that's in the Arctic or in Alaska and so on and so forth, right? So we always got to be conscious of that as well. So it truly is individual, very individualized. And you probably are familiar with the AIP diet, the AIP protocol. So
for our audience, will you share what that is?
Yeah, the autoimmune basically protocol. Okay, and it's a very generalized approach. And what we find when clients come to us, they may have been doing the AIP diet for a while, and they started to feel a little bit better, right? But that feeling better only lasts a short period of time, because at the end of the day, it's not individualized enough, and it's not getting to the root of the problem. So it's a great stepping stone to kind of get you started in the right direction. But in my opinion, it's very incomplete for most people. Some people are going to do well on it, but I think that there's definitely more that needs to be done than just an AIP diet.
Okay. Now, a lot of women with weight problems become vegetarians and or vegans. Why is that a complete nightmare if you have thyroid problems? What is that a bad idea?
What I find when I run labs on people that are vegetarian or vegan, they're in a lot of trouble. Okay. First of all, when you're eating vegetarian or vegan and you're not getting the animal protein in, you're replacing a lot of the protein with something else, which would be carbs, or omega-6 and omega-9 fatty acids, right? Through nuts and seeds and stuff like that, which can be a little bit inflammatory at the same time. I also find that their amino acids are very, very low. And what we have to understand is that amino acids are literally the building block of everything, every enzyme in the body. And enzymes are more than just what we use to digest. Okay. Enzymes are necessary to convert one nutrient into a cofactor to be utilized by the body, right? So if you're deficient in certain enzymes, then it doesn't matter if you're taking vitamin B6, you're not going to convert it appropriately, or niacin, you're not going to convert it appropriately to be used by the body, right? So you're going to have deficiencies there. Tyrosine is a big one. Tyrosine is essential for thyroid production, Okay, it's essential for your dopamine production as well as your epinephrine and norepinephrine production. Okay, so when we're talking about mood disorders, many cases it is a tyrosine deficiency, and if you're not getting the animal protein, you're very likely not getting enough tyrosine, and so it's no wonder why the thyroid starts to suffer.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many depressed vegetarians and depressed vegans I've worked with over the past 24 years.
It's one of those crazy things, right? Because people go on this vegetarian diet because they're told that it's healthier, right? Animal protein is horrific for you, and then they go on this diet and they feel better for a period of time, right? Which is that's not uncommon, right? Because you're giving your digestive system a little bit of a break, maybe. You're aiding in a little bit of detoxification for a period of time, but it's only before long that you start to suffer from different types of deficiencies. So in many cases, that increased energy all of a sudden starts to plummet worse than it was when they started that type of regimen. Their symptoms start to increase as well. Other symptoms. So yeah, that highly advise against it. I think that there are ways to do vegetarian or vegan more healthfully than others, but it's really, really difficult and it's somewhat incomplete, if not completely incomplete.
So if people are in our audience and they're vegan or vegetarian and they have thyroid problems, what would you advise them to do?
Start introducing a little bit of animal protein slowly. Because if you've been vegan or vegetarian for a great period of time, your body may not be digesting proteins properly. So, and that's the other thing too, is people feel like, well, the protein weighs me down, so I'm just going to go vegan. And, that's kind of, the protein's weighing you down because you're not digesting in the first place, which we kind of talked about at the onset of this call, right? So yeah, I definitely recommend adding in some protein, animal protein. We also see vegetarians being very anemic as well, right? Both B12 anemia as well as iron anemia. And so adding in some animal protein, some digestive enzymes to help get you through that meal, and help break it down.
Now, 2 of my 8 books are about how to heal depression naturally. And part of what that's about is really uncovering some of the medical reasons that people are depressed, that they're not getting addressed if they simply take an antidepressant. And as you know, Damian, when people have hypothyroid, under-functioning thyroid, they're frequently depressed. First of all, what is hypothyroidism and how does that make people depressed?
Well, hypothyroidism is basically an underactive thyroid. Okay, so either your pituitary is not signaling properly for your thyroid to produce its hormones, or your thyroid is producing its hormones properly, but your tissue is just not absorbing it. Or as we talked about earlier, something's creating the reverse T3, which is then preventing the hormones from actually being hormones, really, So, there are a lot of causes to it. What was the other half of that question?
So how does being hypothyroid, how does having low thyroid function make you feel depressed?
Well, when you have low thyroid function, you feel like crap. Let's be honest. And feeling like crap can be depressing, right? So I think in many cases, it's not even a clinical depression. It's just that people don't feel well and they're just unhappy. They don't like not feeling well, We can even take it a step further and let's talk about what we talked about earlier, right? The voice, right? And, many more women suffer from thyroid problems than men do. Okay. And if you look at over the last 2 generations, 3 generations and beyond, women's voices have been somewhat suppressed. Okay. And when that voice is suppressed, that's, like we said, it's going to create that tension, which is then going to affect that thyroid. It's going to affect your ability to voice yourself, ability to Speak your truth. Okay. A lot of women are not speaking their truth because in fear of the backlash, or in fear of offending somebody, or in fear of whatever the case may be, and all that affects your mental stability. If you're not living in your truth, you cannot have good physical and or mental health. It's impossible.
I think that there's a lot to what you're saying that's really important for our audience to really understand. I know for myself, there was I published my first book in 1997. At that time, I believe I was on Thyroid Medicine. And then when I started writing books again 18 years later, it was literally writing the books that I think was part of what helped me heal my thyroid. Now that I've published 8 books, I'm off thyroid medicine. Yeah. Go figure. So, when you find your clients who have thyroid problems, they're not speaking their truth. What are some of the ways that you get people to start connecting with their truth so that they can express it?
So in our practice and in our professional opinion and experience, we always start with the physical. Okay. So people that are coming to us, particularly women are coming to us, they feel like a foreigner in their own skin. They just don't feel themselves. Their relationships are suffering with their family, their husbands, their children. They're not able to do things they once used to enjoy doing, nor do they even want to do them because they don't enjoy it anymore. They're typically, a lot of them are connected to exercise, right? And they're exercising more and more and not getting the return. Not sleeping well, depressed, tired, fatigued, so on and so forth. They just feel crummy. So, man, I forgot the question again.
So how are you helping people connect to their voice? So if somebody in our audience is listening, not everybody's going to go out and write 8 books to heal their thyroid.
Right. So where I was kind of going with that was, so what we want to do first is we want to kind of aid in the physical, right? So get them feeling a little bit better physically. Okay. So we work on their biochemical, their nutrition and detoxification, so on and so forth. Once they're feeling a little bit better, then, and only then can we start to focus on from the neck up, from the thyroid up. Okay. This is where Heather my wife is fantastic, similar to you, in kind of helping to reframe that mindset, reframe that outlook, getting women to speak their truth and their voice, and ask for what they need, right? We see a lot of our clients, their husbands don't really help out. They're not supportive, but a lot of times the wives aren't even asking for support. They're just expecting that the man should support them, which is true. He should. Okay. But unfortunately, most of us don't think that way. Okay. We're men. We're very selfish in nature. Okay. But if you ask for help, then we will kick and scream a little bit, put up a little bit of a fight, but we will help, right? So asking your significant other to take some stuff off your plate, telling your family truly how you feel. That's another big one. Everybody's afraid that they're going to offend mom and grandma, right? When a lot of this kind of initiated somewhere down the line in that sense, and I'll probably get some hate mail, but it is what it is. So just really just getting people to be more conscious of speaking their truth and giving different practices on how to do so.
Yeah, I think there's really a lot more to what you're saying than people even realize. I know that initially as a writer, I wrote plays, and I wrote 12 plays actually, and I started writing plays, and my family started going, "You can't write about that. You can't say that." And then I went through an 18-year period where I didn't write enough, I didn't publish. And again, it was by beginning to speak our truth that it started to heal. So for our audience, let's summarize. You and I sort of brainstorm. If we've got a client with thyroid problems, and together, I'm going to put them on an anti-inflammatory diet. I'm going to reduce their inflammation. reduce the caffeine, reduce the alcohol, reduce the tobacco, reduce the sugar, the fried foods, and the gluten. I'm going to make sure they're eating meat. We're going to test their amino acids. If they're working with labs, I'm going to have them test the reverse T3 and test the T3. I'm going to have them do meditation and restorative yoga, test their adrenal function. And energetically, I'm going to want them to rest half a day a week. Share some other things that you like people to do.
I really like the rest thing, and I'm gonna one up you on that. I'm gonna say extreme rest is what we call it. Okay, rest your body, right? So sometimes it means no exercise for a couple months, several months, maybe. You're, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's amazing how many women we remove their physical activity, and all of a sudden they're starting to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds in the first month and a half. That's not uncommon,
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're resting your mind, and I think that's another problem, is that we live in a day of information, right? And there's always information at your fingertips. And some of it is valid, some of it's not. How do we differentiate between the two? And how do some that might be valid might have something else that's valid, but kind of conflict with each other, right? Which then creates confusion. Okay. So I think another thing is seeking out somebody to help you with this journey so you can truly rest, right? And part of resting is resting that mind. Stop thinking, stop doing, and just live in the moment, kind of thing.
Right. In my book, Unlimited Energy Now, there's a practice that I call Grizzly, which is therapeutic rest. And if I've got a client in the later stages of adrenal burnout or thyroid dysfunction, hypothyroid or Hashimoto's, I'm going to ask for guidance and figure out how many days of complete rest they need. And what I do is I get them to get a calendar. I'll give them a period of time, 3-4 months, and then say, okay, you got to get 20 days of complete rest over these next 3 months, 3-4 months, and then they schedule it out, half day here, full day here. And what does resting mean? You sleep, you nap, you meditate, you take a bath. You can read funny or spiritual books, no work material, no TV. You can watch funny movies, but basically you're on your back, right? Now, what about exercise? Are there kinds of exercise that you see that women are doing that are suppressing their thyroid function, like overdoing aerobic activity?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of it has to do with the feminine versus masculine energy, right? So, things like weight training and HIIT training and CrossFit and so on and so forth are creating a lot of masculine type of energy. And as a woman going through some type of thyroid disorder, you need to kind of get more in touch with your feminine energy. Okay. It's bad enough that you're working a 40 or 50 hour week, kind of shedding out that masculine energy, and then there's not enough left over for that feminine side, right? So doing more passive type of exercise would probably be of benefit. Yoga, meditation, stretching, light walks, Pilates, if it's very moderate to low level, would probably be okay. We in many cases forbid any type of overexertion. So we do force them to kind of limit it to more passive methods.
Right.
That's probably one of the most difficult recommendations for people to take is, what do you mean no exercise?
Yeah. And I would add to what Damian says, I'm pro Tai Chi and pro Qigong. Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you get your heart rate above 100 beats per minute on a continuous basis, like you do when you're jogging, when you do like you're in a spin class, like you do when you're a triathlon or a triathlete, you're secreting that cortisol, which is the hormone that's going to suppress your thyroid function. I remember working with a lady who was a triathlete, and she exercised probably, kid you not, 7 hours a day, and she was fat. And, it's like, how can that be? Well, and I'm like, okay, part of what you need to do is stop doing triathlons, right?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. You look at these, we're getting ready for the Olympics pretty soon, right? I think in the next couple of weeks. I don't even know what date it is, but, what we have to understand is that these Olympians, that's their full-time job for many, many months, sometimes couple years, and they have a team of people around them. So we talked about earlier, right? They don't have to think, they just have to do. Okay, so their coaches, their mindset coaches, psychology coaches, their sports specific coaches, their nutritionists, and so on and so forth, are basically just creating this plan, this roadmap for them, and they just have to do, right? So for the average person, they don't. That's not their full-time job. They're not able to support their bodies in all the other methods, all the other ways that these Olympians are doing. So it's not going to work for most people. You really need to kind of take that step back and just get that rest.
Okay, so final thoughts. Damian Dube, functional medicine and nutrition practitioner. Final pep talk for people who are struggling with thyroid problems.
Final pep talk. Faith. That's one really vital piece that we bring to our programs is faith. And it really doesn't matter what your belief is, as long, if you believe in something, it's all that really matters, just having faith, that there is another way. Okay. Not taking everything for face value, not listening to a lot of these medical doctors that have, a hidden agenda, not listening to the pharmaceutical companies that have a hidden agenda, not asking your neighbor, who also suffers some thyroid disease, how to fix their thyroid disease, or how to fix your thyroid disease, right? Not seeking out a professional in the area that doesn't have good health, his or herself, right? Not seeking out a professional that doesn't have the case studies or the client results to prove that he or she knows what the heck he or she is doing, right? So, I think that what I see quite a bit is all these quote unquote top practitioners don't have anything to back up their claims, no client results. And unless somebody has client results, who cares what their credentials are, right? Because at the end of the day, you want results. So you need to find somebody that is constantly replicating the results that you're striving to achieve. I think that's one of the most important things.
You've been listening to Damian Dube, functional medicine and nutritional practitioner. You can find out more about Damian's excellent work at e3energyevolve.com. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. And remember, when you take the steps to heal your thyroid naturally, you're going to feel much better mentally and physically. You're going to have better energy. Your weight is going to go to where it needs to go. It's going to be easy to be slim, and you're going to feel happy and great. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.